It's dark, it's late, and you're walking alone to meet friends nearby. In the distance, you see someone leaning against the wall in the shadows. You're armed and unafraid as you pass him by. And then it happens. Stop the Threat starts now. Hello and welcome to Stop the Threat. My name is B.Towle. On this week's episode, we take you to the Keystone State of Pennsylvania for a reenactment which we have entitled Midnight Mugging. But first, let me introduce you to this week's panel. Don Clark. Don was with the FBI for 35 years and was a special agent in charge of the Houston as well as the New York office. Don is also a returning guest. Chuck Joyner. Chuck served with the CIA before joining the FBI. Chuck retired in 2011 and has opened his own company called Survival Sciences. And Marc MacYoung, another returning guest, is the author of 25 plus books on the subject of surviving in a high-risk situation and is a well-recognized court expert on violence. Welcome all. Chuck, I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about survival sciences. I know that we need to know more about that. What exactly was your goal with that?
Survival Sciences was created to benefit law enforcement, and that's through providing training, consulting, and expert testimony, primarily on use of force topics.
Okay, and you actually have a book.
Yes, I do. Advanced Concepts and Defensive Tactics, a survival guide for law enforcement.
Okay, very good. This is quite a book, actually. There's a lot in here.
I hope it's complete. That was the goal. Yes, sir.
And hopefully you'll sign it, and I'll get a chance to read it. It's a really well put together book. Folks, if you have the opportunity, where can I find this book?
On Amazon.com, CRC is the publisher, and you can go to CRC's website or Amazon.
Okay, yeah, so that's where they would get the book. Well, very good. The other thing that I noticed when I was looking at some of your resume, and I shouldn't call it resume, bio, is that you had made some statements about warning shots.
Yes.
And so you're fairly adamant on that subject, I understand.
I am, and this probably comes somewhat from the FBI because they have the same policy and the same philosophy. You're either legally justified in using deadly force or you're not. So if you fire a warning shot and you're not legally justified, that's going to be a huge problem. And if you are legally justified in using deadly force, you don't want to waste time by purposely missing the shot. You need to focus on putting rounds on target accurately and quickly.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, and some of you that are on the legal side, probably stronger than I am, if you use a warning shot, wouldn't the defense, in fact, you say that you're calling it a warning shot, we're calling it a misplaced shot?
No, I don't think it's a misplaced shot. However, you have to be very careful, the people that's using that shot at the person, you have to be very careful that you're not using that shot to harm somebody or to stop someone. You know, now what law enforcement gets itself into is that if you shoot a shot in the air, you would hope that someone might stop. That doesn't happen very much in today's time, but it might then would stop. But to shoot it that way, that's no excuse for law enforcement to do that.
If we're talking about a civilian situation, okay, let me take it out of context and go this way. If it's a civilian situation and I am being approached, and we will discuss this a little later in the show, I'm being approached by someone who has a weapon, maybe it's a baseball bat, and I'm in fear for my life, and I take the gun out and I shoot into the air, wouldn't the defense say, that's not a warning shot, Mr. Towle, you just shot poorly, but you shot at my client?
Well, that's what the lawyer would say.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm
not
saying.
Necessarily what the court would say.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, this is something you would have to take into consideration if you're going to use a warning shot. It's not going to be understood in court as a warning shot.
Well, it will be, well, it will be if with the right judge, with the judge doing the right thing, because it would be the right thing to shoot the doing thing up in the air.
Right.
Let me add
I
on
think
to
Mark's
that.
going to jump in on you.
First of all, remember, every bullet comes with a little lawyer attached,
Right.
right? And when you shoot up in the air, bullets have to come down. And even if you're shooting in the general area, anything beyond that target is still vulnerable to being shot. So if you shoot this person, or if you give a warning shot and miss, let's call it what it is, and yet hit somebody else, you're now liable for that shot because you sent that bullet out.
So you're
Yeah.
responsible for that round
That's right.
until it stops.
Yeah, right.
If
Yeah,
you
and I wouldn't
intentionally
argue
pulled
that.
The trigger. If you
Yeah.
intentionally pulled the trigger, then that was, is it a warning shot or was it a miss?
Right.
That's always going to be the
Yeah,
joke.
and-
Right.
But I think a lot of times people want to display a weapon or they want to do the warning shot because they're not committed to using deadly force.
Correct.
And that's a
Right.
huge issue, which is
Right.
if you haven't thought about that and resolved that in your own mind ahead of time, you shouldn't be carrying a gun.
Right.
You
Okay.
need to think about,
Yes.
can I save my life and take another person's life?
Right. And we're going to talk more on that, folks. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. I'm going to show you part one of midnight mugging, but let's first review some stats on aggravated assaults because that's what we're dealing with here. An aggravated assault is a robbery with a weapon. Could be any type of weapon as well as a martial arts move kind of a weapon. Last year, there were approximately 725,000 aggravated assaults in the United States. It can happen to anyone, anywhere, anytime, but there are times when we are more vulnerable than others. Let's watch part one.
Come back when you have some money for your drinks, you bum.
Screw you too!
Yeah, man, I'm about a block away from the bar now. I'll be there in a minute. Yeah, just order me a drink. I'll be there in a minute or so. All right.
Hey, can I ask you something? Give me your wallet and your cell phone.
Okay, let me start this by saying I made a couple of notes. And the first note that I made was, what's wrong with changing the side of the street you're on? I mean, you obviously see someone who's intoxicated, he's leaning against the wall, and you continue to walk. You know, proximity is a big deal. So why wouldn't you just step into the street? I mean, it is an alley. You don't have to just come up here and get right in his face. That's my first observation. Second one is I noticed that the good guy here is trying to avoid what's going to take place. Unfortunately, there's no witnesses, no camera coverage. I don't know how that's going to end up in court. But what did you see going wrong here?
Well, the first issue is what you mentioned, is that in order to avoid bad situations, you need to have a general awareness of what's happening around you. And the gentleman did, but yet he didn't respond. So he probably had the little hairs on the back of his neck standing up. He knew something was wrong, and yet he continued on the same path. He didn't go to the other side of the street. He didn't turn around and go the other way. And the best way to resolve any problems, don't get into it to begin with.
Right, don't put yourself in places.
Let's throw onto that. Don't be in an alley at night.
Yes.
I mean, never mind which side of the alley he's on. It's, you stay on the major thoroughfares because crime happens in fringe areas where they need the isolation to do it. So he had put himself into isolation already.
No, I don't think so. I think it goes the other way. I think the bar person was the responsible party there, to bring him out of the bar, knowing that he's already drunk from his bar, and yet he brings him out there and just throws him out of the door. How about calling the police before and have them
Okay, is that
take out?
common?
It should be,
It should be.
and it is, and it is
that
more
common?
now.
Okay.
But
It
it
is
doesn't
more now.
resolve the issue. It doesn't resolve the issue. that the
Doesn't
victim's
resolve the
facing.
original issue. It does lead us to a different point, and I don't know that we have time to cover that different point, but the fact of the matter is I know that the bar can be held responsible
Yes.
for intoxicated patrons.
Right. They should have cut him off.
Right.
But number two, the other thing is, drunks are your customers when you're bouncing. So basically, instead of calling the police, why didn't they call a cab? Because
What's wrong with that idea?
well,
Nothing's wrong with that
right,
idea.
except for the fact that this started out with a no money. So you have an intoxicated person out on the street. That's a problem. Generally, they won't trace it back to the bar.
Hold that thought. I've got to run. I'll be right back, and when I do, we'll go back to Mark because he has a point we need to cover. Welcome back, viewers. Mark was just answering a question I thought we needed to follow up on. Go ahead and finish that thought.
Well, the idea of, bars serve alcohol, these are your customers. So you tend to try and take care of your customers. So the idea of the bar throwing the guy out in the back, it's like, why didn't they call a cab for him is a good question. But the reason you don't want to call the police, by the way, is if you get a reputation in the business that you overserve customers, that causes problems for you.
Anybody want to run with any of that? If not, I'm going to show you part two right now. Let's watch part two.
Hey! Can I ask you something? Give me your wallet and your cell phone.
Look, man, I don't have anything for you, okay? Just put the gun down, we'll go our separate ways, and I won't say anything.
I said, give me your wallet and your cell phone.
Okay. Okay. I'm reaching for my wallet. Just get the gun out of my face. Okay?
Folks, we don't make these up. These are true, real reenactments. And I think we've had a couple of conversations off camera about standing toe-to-toe with someone and getting into a gunfight. I mean, okay, one of them is intoxicated. You don't expect him to be as smart as the other one. But I wasn't thinking the other one was too smart either. So who wants to start
You
with
got
this?
cover right there.
Hey, there's a trash can there.
Yes, that's the dumpster, and standing there, and you also are dealing with what's called the dead man's tin,
And your cell phone.
which is, that's the 10 seconds, it's an Old West term, of it's going to take for that bullet to take effect.
Yeah.
So you can give all sorts of lethal force, but a gun is a distance weapon, and you need to remember that. Because if you're up close, you have to do something more than just hand out damage.
And there's several issues with this. One is the idea that if you're in that situation, you have to move. You cannot stand still. You have to move, preferably to cover, and in this case it was cover. If not cover, at least be moving so as a moving target. The other issue is that people have the misunderstanding that my handgun is going to instantly stop somebody. Nothing in your handgun will instantly stop anybody. A rifle round in the right spot can cause instant death. There's no round in a handgun that'll do that. It's just moving too slowly. So in this case, you have to realize if you pull your weapon out and you start shooting, he will be able to shoot back and you will be taking rounds.
Yeah, well, we certainly saw that, didn't we? So you're in a toe-to-toe gunfight. Well, what does two guys doing armed? All right, that was the first question I had. But I had a little research done on this, and there appears to be that that's okay in Pennsylvania. They have less restrictive laws than we have. The 51% law, and I'm going back to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
The 51% law in Texas is if you have an establishment that derives income more than 51% or greater from the sale of alcohol, you're not allowed to bring a weapon into the bar or that establishment. That would avoid some of this, but what do you think?
Well, first of all, I agree, is that if the bar owner had said, you cannot come in here with a gun, and they have all the processes up that they can check and see and make sure that you don't have them in there. So that was where the first thing
Pennsylvania's
started.
okay with that.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania's okay with guns.
Right.
Yeah, but they shouldn't be.
Let's
Well, you know, they are.
Let's throw
And I'm
in a
going to
second.
hear from the viewers. They're going to come to me from Pennsylvania and explain that law to me, and I expect you to.
Well, even states that don't have that law, it doesn't matter, because unless they have a magnetometer at the door and they have somebody doing a full body search, you don't know. So if it's just a rule you can't bring a gun in, anybody can get a gun in.
Well, and let's also talk about this, that the guy is probably going to a bar with his gun. The quote good guy is probably heading somewhere.
Yeah, and
that
I think
serves
the good
alcohol.
guy had a little bit of an attitude. I got a feeling he was not afraid. He said, oh, I'm armed and I'm going to face this guy. Just
I'm
think it's
armed and I'm in a
probably
dark
bad
alley at
thinking.
night.
Yeah, I'm not happy with it either. But I really want to get back to the fact that legally, what's going to take place here in court? And I've only got a few seconds left to talk about it.
I think what's going to take place in court is that the bar person that shot the person on the ground that that was out there, I think the bar person is has the biggest problem.
I think they both
I
are going
think
to
law
get
enforcement's going to roll up, and they're going to see two guys, and both of them are shot and bleeding, and they're going to have to make a decision on who's going to do what. Both of them are
Both
going
of
to the can that night.
Right.
That's the way I see it.
Right.
And
After
both of
the
them are going to be
hospital, that is.
charged.
And no matter how justified the shooting is, even if it's completely justified, you have a nightmare ahead of you. Financially, emotionally,
Yes. Exactly.
psychologically, you have a nightmare ahead of you.
And that is an excellent point. I've got to go. When we come back, there's much more we can discuss in a very short period of time. Don't go away. Welcome back, viewers. Listen, I know that a lot of folks out there from Pennsylvania who'd like to contact me about this, and I probably do need your help. So on Facebook or Twitter, you can hashtag Stop the Threat and tell me what we're missing here. But first, let me ask this question. Is there anything else the good guy could have done to avoid the situation with the bad guy?
Yes.
I mean, I want to leave the people with a solution here if I can.
Yes, and I was asked this not too long ago. Somebody comes in this restaurant right now and wants your wallet. What are you going to do? And I'd said, I'd give him my wallet.
the wallet.
Yes.
Right.
And they said, why don't you shoot him? I said, because I don't want that nightmare.
Right.
And also, I know if I shoot
That's a
him,
good point, and I think a lot of people
Yes.
don't understand that.
what they also don't understand is if I shoot that person, I'm looking at probably at least $100,000 in court costs.
Right.
And I'm not carrying $100,000 in my wallet.
Yeah.
So it's a
Right.
much easier decision just to give him the wallet.
Right.
I like
and
that
it's
a lot.
cheaper, and there is a time and place where it is necessary to shoot somebody. But just because you have the ability, just because you have a gun or if you have other skills, doesn't mean going down alleys is a smart thing. And literally putting yourself into danger because you think you can handle it is, again, that's where the 100,000, and you may not win after the 100,000.
Right. Don?
I think the bartender caused the problem, because you can't just throw this guy out the back door, even if he was truly a drunken person, and you just take him out and throw him out the back door because you want. That's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do was to call somebody up front and have a police or a cab person take this person away. That's the way to go.
I think that's great. I have no problem with that whatsoever. But if we go back to the alley situation, and I think most people would like to place themselves in the alley here, and they are dealing with this, okay? I think the first thing that I probably noticed, and I think we alluded to it earlier, was how far do you go to avoid a gunfight? watch my lips, till you reach cover. Everybody agree with that?
Absolutely.
Let's find some,
Absolutely.
if you're gonna go to gunfight, if you're gonna do the gun smoke thing, don't be standing there, like something out of a TV show.
Right.
You're
Well, in
covered right
comparison,
beside you.
What's he going to get out of my wallet versus the 100,000 I'm going to have to drop, right? Which one's a better investment?
Yes.
Yeah, you know what some of the problem though is? Some of the problem here is that people who are armed, not everyone, but are armed, and I saw a little bit of this in the eyes of the good guy here, was that he felt as though he was bulletproof and he was going to take this on toe to toe because he was armed.
Right.
And I think that's a false narrative to get involved with.
But it's a very common
Who's going to
narrative.
win on that?
Yeah.
Well,
none of them did.
It's a different game when the other side shoots back.
Yeah.
And that is the one thing that a lot of training doesn't teach people, that the other side will shoot back. When you are legally justified to use lethal force, you have a little problem, and that is somebody is offering you lethal threat, right? Or in the moment the guy is shooting, and that's what we saw here, where this is a common result of a toe-to-toe shootout. Everybody gets shot.
And I absolutely agree with you, and we're running out of time. There's a whole lot more we could talk about here, and there's a lot that we've left out. And viewers, help me with that. Contact me, and let's talk this out a little bit more. But I got to run. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next week. Be safe, be trained, be alert.